is up, guys? Welcome back. Thank you for joining me again for another video. In today's video, I'm going to recap an overnight cycling adventure that I just went on with a group from a local bike shop here in Harrisonburg, Virginia. We rode 135 miles through the night with a bunch of gravel roads, a bunch of crazy descents down mountains, and a whole lot of fun. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to go over is the bike setup that I used for this event. I currently don't have a gravel bike, so I had to make the most of what I did have, which is my road bike. Currently I'm only on 28s, so a pretty small tire size comparatively to the guys that were riding the larger gravel bikes, even a couple of 29ers out there, full suspension mountain bikes. But the way I had the bike set up and all the bags that I had on it, handlebar bag, frame bag, which my buddy Luke at the bike shop was kind enough to let me borrow, and a saddle bag as well. Everything worked out really well. I got through the whole event with no mechanicals, so that was a blessing. Before I get any further, I'll quickly go over the bike layout with you. Throughout all of these compartments, I'll have food and snacks, things like that. A backup headlight since it is an overnight ride. I do have a pretty good headlight on here at the moment, but in case it runs out of battery, we have a backup stashed up here in the handlebar bag. This bag is mostly food. There's a bunch of snacks in here, some toilet paper for emergencies, a couple other things underneath the bottles. These bottles, both of them, have G1 M Sport from BPN as well as electrolytes in them. So that will get me started pretty well, and then hopefully hit a refill station somewhere along the way. And then back here in the saddle bag is where I'm keeping most of my tools, a spare tube, tire irons, things like that. So a pretty good setup. I'm stoked. I think it's going to ride really well. Do a quick shakedown. But this is the Steed. We'll be riding this all night long for about 12 hours. Alright guys, so it is about 7:15 p.m. We just started the ride, fresh out of Harrisonburg. We got about 135 miles to go, so we'll see where the night takes us. Got a pretty good group, should be fun. My man out here doing a 130-mile ride with the bare essentials. This was my first time ever riding a bike overnight, much less really at night at all. Occasionally I'll ride around in the city at night, but it's pretty rare. Most of the time, once the sun goes down, I try to stay off the bike. But with this event, it started at 7:30 p.m. and ended at 7:30 a.m. So obviously, the number one factor of this was going to be light. Luckily, 2 nights prior was a full moon, so we did have some good light when the cloud wasn't covering. When we got up into the mountains though, the trees and the canopy cut off a lot of the light. So most of those gravel ascents and descents were both pretty hard to see. Luckily, my eyes adjusted a bit the longer we rode, so I could kind of find the potholes and the larger rocks as we were riding. Trying to dodge those was probably one of the trickiest parts. Right now, we're about 10 miles into the ride. Everything's going pretty sweet. Hit a couple of gravel sections so far. Everybody's cruising. Vibes are high. We're gonna keep shredding. It is 9 p.m. and we are about 20 miles in right now. We just stopped for a quick snack break, but we are about to start this gravel climb over Shenandoah Mountain, which should be really fun because after that it is a huge gravel descent. We're gonna keep it rolling, keep the pace mellow, and have some fun. One of the descents, my headlight died, and I only had a tiny little backup headlight that would basically just flash. So I put it on my bars and rode as far as I could with that light, but it was definitely still super sketchy. At that point, I basically had to fall in behind anyone I could find with a headlight in order to see what they were seeing. I'm sure that you cannot see me right now, but we just finished up a really rowdy gravel descent. A lot of holes, a lot of big rocks. So that was pretty hectic, but super fun. Couldn't really see where I was going, but we made do. I was just super blessed that none of my tires found a pothole during the ride, because that could have been catastrophic. The last thing I wanted to do was go over the bars in the middle of the night at like 30 miles an hour. Luckily, Lindsay, one of the girls on the ride with us, had a spare headlight and lent it to me for the last half of the ride, which was super crucial. I don't know if I would have made it through without it.
Thank you.
All right, we made it to checkpoint number 2. Finished a majority of the big climb. I think we're about 40 miles in right now. Pulled up, support van's here, fire's made, tunes are going, got some beverages, some food, much needed break. We did have a support van that met us for 2 stops at about mile 40 and I think 75. So luckily we were able to put some extra food, snacks, water, things like that in the van, so that when we got to those points we were able to restock. But after mile 75, we didn't see the van the rest of the time. So the last half of the trip was solely self-supported. Along that route, there aren't too many places to fill up your water bottle because a lot of the time you're out in the wilderness. We found a couple of natural springs where we were actually able to fill up our water bottles. Other than that though, the water we had was what we had. So I started with some electrolyte mix and some G1M Sport from BPN to get the carbs and electrolytes in my bottle. But towards the end of the ride, I didn't have any backups of that, so I was running on pretty much just water. The only problem I find with those longer rides and just having water is that you're not getting enough sodium in. So in order to get some of that extra sodium in, I was eating things like pretzels, peanuts, veggie straws, and corn chips. I think fueling is one of the most important parts during a ride like this. It's so long and so much endurance is required that you need to be constantly giving your body the fuel source that it needs to get through the ride. There will be times when you are not hungry and you do not want to eat, but you still need to get those calories in order for your body to function. I was having snacks every 30 to 45 minutes, just trying to get food in order to continue going. In the past, I've been really focused on carbs as my main nutrition and fuel source. A lot of sugary snacks like cookies and Cliff Bars, things of that nature. Since we were in a lower zone, mostly zone 2, zone 3 the whole time, I wasn't using the carbs and the sugar as quickly as I typically would have. So instead, I started to transition towards fats like peanuts and cashews. The longer lasting energy that I found from those fats was actually super beneficial.
Yeah. Partying. Ew.
Route got pretty rough. So the road bike choice wasn't the friendliest, but like I said, currently that's the only bike that I have. So I had to make do. One thing I totally would do differently next time is maybe lower the tire pressures a little bit more so that it wasn't so rigid on my lower back. But otherwise, I was pretty excited about the way it performed.
just wrapped up the midway stop. We're at mile roughly 70. This is the last time we'll see the support vehicle, so we ate as many snacks as we could, grabbed a couple for the road, got a Red Bull right here to keep me going. So we're gonna pedal it out, about another 70 to go.
At mile 80, we hit this pretty gnarly gravel climb. It wasn't steep, but it was super long. And since it had rained a couple days before, the gravel was kind of wet and sandy in spots. So I was putting out so many watts just to go up this hill and not stop moving. So by the time we got to the top of that, I think it was mile 88, people were just on the ground, laying down, bikes to the side. It beat everybody up. So once we finished that climb, the rest of the climbs seemed pretty mellow. Although we did have one that hit 12–15%, although it was really short, so we were able to kind of power through that punch. It was a super solid group. Everybody was kind of having fun and just vibing. Had I done this ride with just myself or maybe one other person, it would have probably been a lot more difficult. But having that group of people around you and just feeding constantly off of a bunch of good energy makes that 135 miles seem a lot mellower. Anytime we hit a really fun descent, there was hooping and hollering and everybody was just having a blast, so that definitely kept the vibes high. After riding all night, seeing the sun start to come up around 7 in the morning was an absolute relief. It felt so good. It just gave us that extra little boost of energy we needed to finish the ride and get to the end. At about 7:45 that morning, we rolled back into town, and for the last hour, all I've been thinking about is a nice hot cup of coffee. So we finally ended after 137 miles and close to 10 hours in the saddle at a breakfast spot called the Little Grill in Harrisonburg.
We made it 135 miles later. I am absolutely exhausted, but we are gonna go in here and grab a little bit of breakfast.
And I mean, right off the bat, I load up with 2 coffees, put in an order for eggs, potatoes, a biscuit, bacon, you name it. I was so hungry, so happy to just be in the warmth, enjoying some caffeine, sitting around the table with some friends, talking about the experience that we just had. Through sleep deprivation, hunger, cold, all of those things, it was still the most rad experience and so fun. I think the main takeaway for me is to just say yes to more of those experiences that seem really out there. Spontaneously accepting invitations to go do things that really push you beyond your limits can lead to some of the most beautiful outcomes. I challenge you guys this week, this month, this year, push beyond the boundaries of what you would typically try and just go for it. I promise if you trust the process, you will have more fun than you ever would have imagined. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Really hyped to share this experience with you, and I hope you found some kind of takeaway from it. Please hit the like button, hit a comment, a share, subscribe to the channel. I love you guys all. Thank you so much.